Hi everyone, it's Dr Ramani statements, and welcome back to this YouTube channel where we talk about all kinds of small and big issues connected to narcissistic relationships. Statements. Some of you might be thinking, I've watched so many of your videos already, I really get this now. Well, here's the next part, and honestly, statements. This is where it gets complicated. Once the narcissist realizes that you know, that you truly understand what's going on, things change. Statements. And not always in a good way. So let's slow this down and really break apart what that means for you. Statements. This topic connects to a question I get all the time in comments, emails, and messages. Do narcissists know what they are doing? Statements. Do they know they are narcissistic or difficult? And maybe an even bigger question is this: do narcissists actually know how insecure they are? Statements. Because from the outside, the insecurity is obvious. The short answer is kind of. Remember that shame and rage cycle I talk about so often. Statements. Narcissistic people are not confused and they are not totally disconnected from reality. They can see that their behavior has consequences. Statements. And they do know that what they do is sometimes not a good look. But their impulsivity and deep sense of entitlement mean they don't stop themselves. Statements. And more importantly, they don't think they should have to stop. It's almost like they feel they will explode if they don't get their nonsense out. Statements. That tension has to be released somehow. So yes, over time, they know their behavior is creating problems, but they explain it away. They rationalize it. Statement. They justify it. They defend it. Still, in a very small corner of their mind, they know that what they're doing probably isn't right. Sometimes, statements. If they end up in therapy, they may even admit they can't control it. It feels too uncomfortable to hold it in, so they just let it out. Statements. They might even say they know it sounds ridiculous. If they ever spoke their real truth, it would sound something like this. Statements. Why can't everyone just let me get away with whatever I say? I don't really mean it. I just need to get it out. Statements. I think everyone is against me when they don't let me do this. Life is unfair to me. I always know what's best. Why can't everything just go my way? Statements. And why can't everyone let me have my tantrum? They can't say that out loud and they know they can't. But that is exactly what's happening inside. Now, statements. In every narcissistic relationship, there is a turning point. It's the moment when they realize that you get it. It's subtle. It's almost invisible. Statements. It happens under the surface. Maybe you're not reacting as much anymore. The gaslighting doesn't shake you like it used to. You're gray rocking more. Statements. You're not defending yourself. You're not explaining everything. You might even stand a little taller because now you see the pattern. Statements. Maybe you're not putting yourself down as much. Maybe you don't panic when they threaten to leave or say they want a divorce. Statements, or throw passive-aggressive comments at you. And here's the strange part. At this stage, the relationship often becomes worse. Statements. The narcissistic person actually starts acting out more. It's like you've seen into their insecurity and figured out the game. And they hate that. Statements. When you stop taking the bait, you can almost picture it like a graph. The narcissist's rage starts to climb. They aren't getting the reactions they want. Statements. Remember, they need you to react. They need you to look emotional or unstable so they can point and say, see. Statements. Look how crazy you are. And then they feel better about themselves. So when the old tricks stop working, they push harder. The insults increase. Statements. The cruelty ramps up. They start targeting your friends or your family. They attack the things they know hurt you the most. They might mock your job. Statements. They might criticize your cooking. They might make fun of your appearance or your past. It becomes more toxic than you thought possible. You think, statements, surely it can't get worse, but somehow it does if you are able to hold your ground and not break, and that is a big if. Statements. You eventually reach the top of that roller coaster, and at the top, something interesting happens. In some cases, the narcissist starts to deflate. Statements. Sometimes they get bored. Sometimes they lose energy. But getting to that point means going through a lot of anger, abuse, and rage. Statements. So if you thought it was bad before, understand that this phase can feel unbearable. When you finally understand what's happening, they sense it. Statements. Even though narcissistic people lack empathy, they are extremely tuned into their environment. But they see the world through a very self-centered lens. Statements. They are always scanning for threats. They watch for people who look at them the wrong way. They believe they are never given the respect they deserve. Statements. They feel constantly underappreciated. They think they don't get enough praise for how great they believe they are. So they notice changes. Statements. They notice when people are catching on. There comes a moment for many narcissistic people when they realize they have pushed too far. Statements. They see that they've driven someone to the edge and that person finally shuts down. This can be very powerful. Statements, especially if it happens in places like work or with people who are not emotionally close to them. Statements. Narcissistic people often take partners and family members for granted, so they may not notice it as much there. But when someone in their outer world, statements, like a coworker or boss, starts seeing them differently, it hits hard. The idea that people are starting to see through them activates deep shame. Statements. When they realize others are walking on eggshells around them, almost managing them like they are unstable, they hate it. They feel exposed. Statements. But now they're stuck. On some level, they know they are out of control, but they also can't face it. It becomes a painful loop. Statements. If you're in a relationship with someone like this and you truly understand narcissism, you may slowly move toward indifference. Once you have the roadmap, statements, things look different. And honestly, that roadmap is the reason I started this channel in the first place. I want to show you the patterns, all of them, statements, even the subtle ones. When you can see the pattern, you can name it. You can stop blaming yourself. You can understand why things never change. Statements. Think of this channel like a GPS for narcissism. Once you know the route, the confusion fades, the behavior makes sense. That doesn't mean the work is easy. Statements. You still have to deal with trauma bonding and emotional wounds. But once you see it clearly, you are no longer lost. Once you truly get it, statements, you cannot unsee it. And that awareness, even though it can make things harder at first, is also the beginning of your freedom. Statements. You start walking a much wider circle around them, and they notice it. Once that happens, their behavior can shift in many different ways. They might swing between intense rage and moments where they suddenly try to prove that they can hold it together. They may try to show you and the world, statements, that they are actually a good person. One moment they are exploding, the next moment they are calm and almost charming. Statements. They may move from open insults to quiet, passive-aggressive comments. Statements. All of this happens because the narcissistic relationship has always been about control. Control of how the relationship looks to other people. Statements. Control of the people inside the relationship. Control of the story, the meaning, and the narrative. And most of all, control of narcissistic supply. Statements. It really comes down to control, control, control. Once you understand what is happening, they feel that control slipping away. Because of that, statements, they often try even harder to control you. They don't want you to knock their ship off course. They want to keep steering the story, the image, statements, and the outcome. But here's the problem for them. Once you truly understand what's going on, statements, their instability actually makes it impossible for them to get that control back. And because they can't regain it, the rage increases. Statements. There really is no clean way around the rage. You might be thinking, is there a way for me to understand this without them constantly losing it around me? Statements. Honestly, probably not. Over time, a few things usually happen. You may simply get tired of the relationship and decide to leave. Statements. Or if leaving is not an option, you might make the relationship very flat, very routine, very mechanical. You stop engaging emotionally. Statements. Or you may quietly hope that they are the one who leaves. You might even hope they have somewhere else to go when they have their tantrums. Statements. Because you're no longer willing to listen to it. Eventually, your very presence can become a trigger for their shame. Statements. Just you being there reminds them that they've been seen, that their behavior has been understood. When that happens, they may try to destroy you with rage. Statements. Or they may run away because being around you feels too exposing and uncomfortable. Neither of those outcomes feels good. Statements. Especially if you're not fully ready for the relationship to end. And yes, I understand that conflict. You might think logically, statements, that you shouldn't want the relationship anymore, but emotionally, you still don't want it to be over. Statements. You might also wonder if there's a way for you to understand narcissism without them realizing that you understand it. Again, probably not. Statements. The changes in your behavior, even small ones, are going to be noticed. And that's what makes this so frustrating and discouraging. Statements. They didn't notice you when you were crying. They didn't notice you when you were begging to be heard or understood. Statements. But the moment you slightly change the amount of narcissistic supply you give them, they notice immediately. Understanding narcissism is complicated. Statements. Once you change, your partner will often pathologize you. They might say things like, "You've changed, you're cold now, you're acting strange." Statements. "You're not as socially skilled as you used to be. Maybe something is wrong with you." Statements. They will label and criticize the very shift that is actually healthy for you. So the thing that will eventually set you free. Statement. Truly understanding narcissism can make your life very uncomfortable for a while. In the long run, it's a win, but in the short term, it can feel awful. That's why it helps to prepare yourself. When you first get it, you might feel almost excited, like you've cracked the code. You might think, wow, I finally understand what's been happening all this time. But as your behavior shifts, the narcissistic person in your life will notice it. Statements. It doesn't matter if it's a partner, a family member, or someone you work with. In many cases, they will see the change. Statements. And it will make them uncomfortable. Why? Because the power they had over you was based on your confusion. It was based on gaslighting, manipulation, statements, and keeping you upside down. Now you see it clearly, and when you see it, something strange happens inside you. There's a calm that starts to show up. Statements, a quiet sense of clarity. It's almost like saying, "Oh, this is how the trick works," and suddenly it's not even impressive anymore. They notice that calm. Statements. They notice that you are no longer confused. They recognize that they can't dominate you the same way, can't overpower you emotionally. Statements. Can't twist reality like before. And when they realize they've lost that power, they become deeply frustrated. That frustration often shows up as rage. Statements. Like I said earlier, in the long term, understanding narcissism is healthier for you, if for no other reason than it helps you stop blaming yourself. Statements. You stop personalizing everything. You start to see that this was never about your worth or your failures. That work learning not to blame yourself. Statements is something you do for you. It was not your fault. Once you understand it, it's like unlocking a hidden code. For a long time, statements, they controlled you in a quiet, manipulative way, keeping you stuck under their thumb. Now that grip loosens. And yes, statements, the relationship can start to feel empty and unsatisfying at this point. But even so, you are no longer living in a state of constant confusion, statements, invalidation, and self-doubt. You are no longer wondering which way is up, and that matters. I hope this helps you make sense of what you're experiencing. Thanks again for listening.